Brené Brown says that you'll never walk into a room alone as long as you know your top 2 core values. So when you're in the room and you know your core values, they will keep you in alignment with yourself as you move through decisions. And while this is not inherently wrong and actually a very important part of the process, I found for myself it wasn't enough. And I needed more to be able to stay in alignment with myself and be aware. And we're gonna get into that in this video. But first, welcome to the Immaculate Mindset, the most imperfectly perfect place on the internet, because that's what it means to be immaculate, to be perfectly imperfect. I'm Allie Amac McGuire, and as I always like to say, I have 0 of the answers for you, only tools I build to help me answer my questions for myself, and my hope is by sharing my story and these tools, they will help you answer your questions for yourself as well. So let's get into it. Now, if you've been following me, you will know that about 2.5 years ago, I had a massive burnout breakdown from my career, but basically my life. I continued to overwork and burn myself out. And one day I just couldn't take it anymore and realized that I needed to figure out what was going on with myself. So I walked away from my career and my life to do just that. While I was in the beginning of this journey, I was really lost. I had no idea, not even like what I was going to do, but what was even the purpose of life, right? And I was talking to my best friend one night, and she told me, you know what, Allie, I think you really need to watch this TED Talk from this woman, Brené Brown. My therapist recommended it to me, and it really helped me out. So I was like, okay, I'll watch this eventually. And though I didn't watch it that night, I did watch it on my way back to LA from Las Vegas after seeing Kelly Clarkson in concert, which is, not actually an important part of this story, but I do love to say it because I had a really good time. So if you've never seen the TED Talk from Brené, it is, I think, one of the top 3 watched TED Talks of all time. And she talks about shame and how vulnerability is the cure to shame. And this was my first aha moment in this process of figuring out why and how I got to this breakdown. I don't know that I ever thought before about the definition of shame, what shame meant to me, vulnerability, all of that stuff. But as I'm listening to the talk, it's the first time I realized that I've been carrying a lot of shame from other people that wasn't even mine. And I realized that I wanted to be successful in the music industry so much because I was trying to prove my worth. I was searching for validation, and I was just trying to prove people wrong. And honestly, before that moment, I had no thought that this is what was driving me. Just trying to prove my worth, being successful. So that was a major crack for me in this experience, in this breakdown, and finding my way back to myself. So I decided I should consume every book and everything Brené Brown has ever done. So I did. And, I just want to give a shout out to Brené Brown. I probably talk about her in every single video. So, I'm in no way, shape, or form calling out Brené Brown. Her work is incredible. But through my journey, I had to take it a little farther. So anyway, in one of the books, she starts talking about finding your core values and why they're so important. And like I said in the beginning of the video, that you'd never walk into a room alone again when you know these core values. And I loved that. I was like, oh gosh, yeah, like let me become aware of this. Let me do this project. And at the time, I was also building a speech to give for students at Stanford about how to navigate the music industry. And I was like, I think maybe if I knew my core values during this, it could have prevented me from being in some of the more toxic, messed up situations that I was in. So I do, she has, a core values exercise, and I find my core values. But so what you do in the worksheet is you pick 15 to 20 of this list of 100 that means something to you. And it's not easy because you look at a lot of these words and these values and you're like, I want to aspire, or I am so many of these things, but having to, break it down to 15 to 20 is really important because, we're trying to get really specific here. We really want to know ourselves. Like our values are our foundation. They are who we are and how we want to move into the world. So I do this and I find my core values to be authenticity and growth. And at this point in time, I was in my anger phase about everything. So I was like, before I write this speech, I'm going to write an expose on the music industry, and I'm going to tear it all down, but I'm going to talk about your core values and how they could help you out inside of it. So I do that, and I don't know really what I'm going to do with this. I guess I was going to be put it out on Instagram or something. I'm sure it was going to make a splash. But I write this article, and I let my friend read it. And when she reads it, she's like, Allie, this is good, but you never talk about how you broke your values in this piece. And that was a huge cracking open moment in this journey for me, because that was the first time that I really realized, that I didn't love myself enough to get myself out of these toxic situations and everything I was putting myself through. And it was it's difficult when you understand how much you really didn't love yourself, how much you disliked yourself, especially when you thought you did. I was like, no, I love me for sure. I love me. I did not love myself. But it's hard to admit that. And I was like, okay, I did not break my core values. My core values were authenticity and growth. And there's not going to be a person that you'd ever meet that is going to tell you that I have not been AMAC everywhere that I have been. Being me has always just been so important to me, so much so that I quit Atlantic Records or I got fired. It kind of depends who you talk to because they didn't want to allow me to wear basketball shorts. But that's a story for another video. So nobody's going to tell you that I haven't been authentic. I have been authentic as I possibly could be. And I was always looking to grow. I mean, my career was growing. I went from not knowing anyone who worked in music to working in major labels and achieving platinum and gold records. And I was working with people who I grew up listening to. So what was happening here? And this is when I realized your values are not enough. They're not enough. You're not walking in the room alone, but I think that I still need some more support here as I walk into this room so I can understand what's going on. I can understand why I'm here. I can understand and observe myself and figure out, why I'm acting the way I'm acting, or why I'm staying in this situation where these people don't respect me. So I keep going through the process of healing and trying to understand myself and, why I was doing all of this. And I was reading a book written by Jay Shetty, and he was just talking about ego a lot. And that's kind of like when it dawned on me that my ego was my motivation. So this was the beginning of me building the Immaculate Mindset Inner Compass, which is my tool to help you become self-aware, be accountable, stay curious, and choose your life. This is the creation of creating the best friend that you get to go into every room with. And that's when I created the why section, which is your motivation. But I broke it down into your ego and your purpose whys. So now we can go back to when I'm watching the Brené Brown TED Talk in my car, and I realize that I am doing this to prove people wrong. I'm doing it to search for validation, to prove my worth. Those are my ego whys. My purpose whys are impact and joy, and that comes from loving music and the impact and the joy that music had on me, and when I was growing up, and how it saved my life. And I think anyone who does art, would feel similar in those kind of ways. And that was always happening. Like, your ego and your purpose whys are always happening together, but who is in the driver's seat? And then hindsight is 20/20, right? So I could really see, I was staying in all of these situations for my ego. I just had to get to this outcome. And, your values still matter, because that's your integrity, right? If I was being fake and not authentic during that, then I am super far off the edge, right, of being close to myself and being in alignment with literally anything. So your values are still the anchor that are holding you to who you are. And I'm really grateful that without being aware of them or being able to name them, that I still had that foundation for myself that did, hold me in reality. And I think when I really went through the breakdown, like, that was a lot of what it was about, because it was kind of being like, dude, like, this isn't working here. So yeah, your ego and your purpose whys are the motivation. And then you have your whats, which is what you're doing for your whys, and your values. And watching this YouTube video is a what. When you meet up with somebody for coffee, it's a what. You can ask yourself, are you watching this YouTube video for your ego or your purpose? And does it align with your values? And then how you think, act, and feel, which, I think all of these components are really important. But how you're thinking, acting, and feeling is really when you get to observe yourself. Like, how am I thinking before I go to this meeting? How does my body feel while I'm getting ready, while I'm going there, while I'm there? What am I thinking while I'm actually in this meeting? And how am I acting prior to getting there? And while I'm getting there, am I acting as myself, or am I acting as a version of myself, like, that this person is going to accept? And just being able to observe yourself and being really aware of these things is how you're going to be able to be in rooms and know if they're the right rooms for you. As far as values go, it's really important to get the top 2. I mean, ask yourself, like, let me know in the comments what your top 2 core values are. And if you don't know them, I have a link here where you can get a free little web exercise that I created to help you find your core values for free. If somebody asks me what my values are, I can very easily be like, authenticity, growth. I know what it is. Super important. But I thought just the 2, they needed a little bit of support. So, when I do the core values exercise in my Inner Compass workbook, which will be out in January, by the way, I take the rest of these 20, right? Because you pick the 20 and then you see which 2 kind of encompass all of them. And once I choose those 2, then I take the rest of the 18 and I place them underneath these core values to be your secondary, your supporting values. So, for example, like underneath growth is patience for me. Underneath authenticity is accountability. Like, these are kind of like describing what authenticity is to me and is the support. If I ask myself, how I'm acting in a situation, I can ask myself, like, for the support to know if I'm moving in authenticity, if I'm moving in growth. But what's really important then is knowing those things and then also defining what that looks like. What does it look like for you to have patience in a situation and for other people to have patience with you in a situation? Because that's what knowing all of this is about, right? When we're in the situation, how am I thinking, acting, and feeling here is a great way to know if you're safe or unsafe, or whether it's just challenging, or if you're living in a past situation. So the more specific and, the more digging we do, the more understanding, the more we understand, what we're doing in every situation. So when you know the actions that you need to take to have patience, and then the actions that other people need to take to have patience with you is so important, because it's going to be really easy to identify when that isn't happening. And then, if you need to talk about it, we also talk about communication in the workbook. But that's a separate thing. So I just wanted to talk about this because it's really important to know your core values. But I think it's really important to dig deeper into a situation. So, and the situation, being yourself or knowing yourself, right? So I could tell when I look back of all of these situations that I knew were not bringing me joy, for sure. So we could talk about joy, get a little more defined in there. Okay, maybe this is bringing somebody else joy, but it's not bringing me joy. Is this having the impact that I want it to have, the kind of impact I want to have on the world? And if those things aren't happening, people aren't having patience with me whatsoever. They aren't holding themselves accountable. I can look back and see all of these things that were huge signs that pointed to the fact that these situations I was in were not right for me. And had I built the Inner Compass prior to that, I think I could have found myself in better situations with people who respected me and still had the outcomes that I was looking for. But I would have enjoyed the journey a lot more. And that's really what I hope to bring, right? So you bring the Inner Compass with you into the rooms that you go into, and it helps you stay in alignment with yourself to enjoy your journey along the way and not just search for an outcome to solve everything for you. You get to choose every day how you really want to live. And you can have courage and you can have bravery to know that you can find these situations. So, was Brené Brown wrong? I wouldn't say she was wrong, but I appreciate the piece she added to my puzzle and what got me to understanding myself and being able to enjoy my life on a different level. And with me sharing my story, that is what I'm hoping to do for you as well. It's not about doing it like I did. It's about learning and listening and, figuring things out for yourself. Have your own experience, because it is possible. And walking into rooms, really knowing yourself and really knowing whether it's for you or it's not for you is an incredible tool to help you navigate life in the way that you want. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for being here on the Immaculate Mindset, the most imperfectly perfect place on the internet. This is what I colored this week. I really like this one. I think maybe I'm gonna finish this. And if you don't know, this is like a mindful technique that I use. It keeps my mind calm during all of this. And honestly, I just really like to color. So this is a good time for me to color. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. Please drop your core values in the comments. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts on this, please let me know. If you love Brené Brown, shout out Brené Brown in the comments. And we'll see you guys next time right here on the Immaculate Mindset.